Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be able to be here today to introduce myself. The speaker that you're going to be hearing from immediately right now as I speak is Kyle Atwood. Kyle Atwood comes to us from Canada. He's actually lived in the United States longer than he has lived in Canada. While he is for sure proud of his Canadian roots, he's for sure proud of his Canadian roots, he also is more than proud to be part of the American family, and he is trying to get to his citizenship. Now, Kyle Atwood, please take the podium. Thank you very much. I've got the lectern very much. Okay. Today I'm going to talk to you about, well, one of my favorite topics that there ever was, myself. And I'm not really that conceited, but I do actually have quite a few things that I'd like to share. I'm going to cover approximately 4, depending on the time, I may actually enter into a 5th small event that happened in my life to be able to shape who I am today. All right. So one of the first things I want to talk about that shaped who I am today was my birth. We're going to go past that because I really don't remember a lot of it. But as I grew, I had a very, very close relationship with my grandfather. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my grandfather. Understanding my family's tree, my father and his mother left Vernal, Utah when my father was approximately 8 years old. He and his mother went up to Canada after having had divorced from who is my paternal grandfather, for him being, well, he found himself another woman. How's that? I don't even know where to say or what to call that, but that's okay. My dad and his mother moved to Canada, and soon after, believe it or not, the man who is my paternal grandfather, his cousin, went to Canada and ended up marrying my grandmother. This is the man that I have always called grandfather. His name is Irvin, and so we refer to him as Grandpa Irvin. Grandpa Irvin was very important to me in my life as I grew. He was the kind of man who would make you cry and make you laugh, and you knew he loved you, whether you wanted to know it or not. He was the kind of man that as you walked into the house, he would embrace you with a hug if he had never met you before. And my family carried on a tradition that I'm actually quite glad has seemed to stop. Even as I was growing up at about 7 or 8 years old, 9 years old, to greet my grandfather, you greeted him with a mouth-to-mouth kiss. And I know a lot of people now will go, hey, because it's an odd thing, but it wasn't. Even my father, who was in his 40s at that time, would greet his father with a mouth-to-mouth kiss. Really awkward, a little strange, and now we don't do that. My kids don't give me a kiss on the mouth. I don't actually expect it. I don't want it, to be honest with you. Even when I was a child, I didn't want to kiss my grandfather, but it was respect, and that's what you gave your elders. So my grandfather was very important to me. Telling a story about my grandfather, and if I have 4 events to get through, I better talk quickly. My grandfather was an avid fisherman. He was a hunter too. In fact, here not too long ago, Brian told you a story about a bear he killed. Does anybody remember that story? Yeah, it was a good story. That was my grandfather. That was his bear. The truth of the matter is, though, he was an avid fisherman, and he was a hunter and a trapper, and he did that by trade for a long portion of his life. Now, I tell you that so as when you understand there is a lake in Canada, close to where I grew up in southern Alberta, called Police Lake. Police Lake was named Police Lake because a mounted Mountie, that means he was on a horse, actually fell through the ice one winter and died there. So they just called it Police Lake, and it was tragedy, but that's how it goes sometimes. Anyways, my grandfather would go out and he would hunt, and he one day got himself a wolf. And as he's carrying this wolf across the lake, he fell through the ice. Well, that's a dangerous thing, falling through ice. If any of you have actually done it, I'm glad to see you're here. As he did, he just kind of, you fall and you throw your arms out like such. And as he did, the dead wolf, of course, flopped onto the ice, and that was that. Well, my grandfather was trying to get out of this hole, and he looks over at the wolf. Well, the water had slopped up and actually frozen this wolf's hair to the ice. So he reaches over, grabs a hold of the dead wolf, pulls himself out of the ice. Well, he leaves the wolf, and he shimmies off to the side, and he's alive, and he's okay, and everybody's great. I tell you that story to inform you about a story that I want to tell you now. As I'm out with my father on Police Lake and we're going home. I'm about 8 years old, 9 years old, and as a young man, standing next to my father, thought it was great and everything was good. I'm going to get through one story. Good grief. I fell through the ice. And sloosh, right up to here. My dad reached down, grabbed me by my hair, pulled me up, and we got out of there. Now, the only reason I tell you that is having that type of connection to my grandfather, a simple thing, made a world of difference just because now I was closer to my grandfather. My grandfather was such an important part of my life. When my third son was born, my wife and I had not huge differences on names, but we came up with a name, click, click, and we decided to throw a coin on it. And as we tossed the coin, it came up with the obtuse side, obverse side, and I won. We actually decided to name my son Forrester Irvin Atwood, and he was named after my grandfather. Since that time, my son has actually taken a very keen interest in what my grandfather was, is, and did, and so he therefore has done a lot of family genealogy. Guys, I'm going to have to sum up and just let you know how very important my grandfather was in my life. He was born American, moved to Canada because that's where his wife was. I'm Canadian, my wife's Canadian. We all moved down to the United States because we realized that's where we're supposed to be. And with that, I'll thank you very much for your attention, and we'll tell you some more later. Thank you.